2025 saw the release of the GoPro Max 2 360 camera, and while this was long awaited, as I predicted, the release of the HERO14 Black was delayed as a result. But it seems this is a purposeful strategy on the part of GoPro, as we'll see. So when can we expect to see the release of the HERO14? And will GoPro ever break out from the pure action camera market? A recent earnings call has offered a tantalizing glimpse into what GoPro has in store for 2026. So let's get into what was said and what we can realistically take from it. GoPro earnings calls are quite interesting because they often reveal things that don't get widespread coverage elsewhere, and this one was no exception. The shareholders on the call were just as interested as the rest of us as to why there was no HERO14 this year, and they asked Nick Woodman directly about it. Woodman replied that it was a strategic decision, that a little bit of patience now yields, we believe, a significant upside in 2026. We've got something special planned. We think this decision is going to help us grow unit revenue and profits in the first quarter of 2026. We believe by focusing on a bigger upgrade, we'd have a more significant outcome than if we were to have launched a product in the third quarter of this year. When he was asked about where camera innovation should go from here, Woodman replied the following: "It's clear that the opportunity for growth comes from diversification and meeting more of the specific needs of the market. Traditionally, the market that the Hero was built on was a bit of a Swiss Army knife. It did it all for everybody, and that was terrific for a time, but consumer and professional demands have grown and have become more specialised. We've seen the end customer not want to have a do-it-all Swiss Army knife so much as they want additional tools, multiple tools that help them achieve specifically the solution to whatever capture scenario they're solving." He went on to say, "That's terrific for us because that can help expand the TAM, the total available market, and help us relate GoPro to more end users and not burden one product with the burden of doing everything for everyone. So what I would say is diversification, diversification, diversification. You're seeing that already in our product line, and you'll see that scale in 2026. Brian McGee, the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, added the following: "Our GP3 processor is also market leading, and its capability and what we're able to do with that from an imaging and innovation perspective. So that's another area where we're leading with the product that will come out with next year using that processor." Nick Woodman went further. 2026 will be the year of GP3. Our current cameras are based on a GP2 processor, and 2026 is the debut of our line of GP3 based processors that'll take GoPro and the industry to the next level of performance. Now, when Nick Woodman was asked about the overall outlook for 2026 in the context of looking at the competition from the likes of DJI and Insta360, although they weren't mentioned specifically, Nick Woodman said the following: "To add to what I said about market demand for diversification, that's how we see consumers behaving today. All of our research shows that there's clearly an opportunity to diversify our product lineup to better meet the diversified needs of the market. That's what the roadmap delivers in 2026. And when you combine that diversification with the next generation GP3 processors from GoPro, that's going to, we believe, make GoPro a market leader in all the important categories that we're participating in. So the demand that we see for our products today, we see increasing as we enter this new era of performance and capability at GoPro next year." Now, interestingly, Nick Woodman added the following, and this is quite important: "The cadence of launching new products next year will be steadily throughout the year. That's also something to look forward to as opposed to being so back-end loaded." And just to finish with what was said at the meeting, this is another interesting quote from Nick Woodman. "Additionally, the low light capable camera segment, which we estimate the TAM, the total available market, to be 2 to 2.5 million units annually, represents a significant opportunity for GoPro as we do not currently participate in this market." Now, understandably, some people were frustrated at the lack of a HERO14 release. But as I mentioned in my Max 2 review, I think that's a good thing, because when companies get tied into a yearly release schedule, that's when innovation sometimes falls by the wayside and you end up with these very small incremental releases that don't really add a lot to the previous model. So I've always felt that following this defined yearly release cycle was always a bit limiting. It's much better to have a bi-yearly cycle or even a 3-yearly cycle, depending on how good the camera is. So what can we actually expect to see from GoPro in 2026? Well, as Nick Woodman alluded to, there will be several products spread throughout the year. Now, these won't necessarily be actual cameras as such. We know that GoPro has invested a lot into smart motorcycle helmets as one example. So we can probably expect to see the fruition of that come next year. But there will be cameras. So what can we expect to see? Well, we can almost certainly expect to see a GoPro HERO14 Black. That is a given. And my prediction is, given what was said in the earnings call, I would expect that to be in the spring next year, possibly the end of spring. We've got Christmas just coming up with the holidays, and I don't think GoPro is going to release a camera first thing next year, straight after the holidays. I think that would be a strategically odd decision. So I think we're more than likely to see Hero 14 at the end of spring, perhaps in March or April. But it is interesting that GoPro has acknowledged that it is losing significant market share to competitors based upon diversified products, and specifically the lack of a low light ability within its cameras, because until now GoPro has been slightly dismissive of these low light modes on rival cameras. When I use these low light modes, they can look over processed. They're getting better, but they do look over processed, and it's a result of the grunt that's in these cameras like the DJI Action 5 and the Ace Pro 2 that allows those cameras to do that. But it's also important to note that some of these cameras are better in low light overall than any of the GoPro cameras, even without the low light modes. And there's one camera in particular that does this very well indeed, and I'm not allowed to talk to you about it, but pretty much everyone who watches this channel will know all about it anyway. But such is the strange way in which online publishing and journalism works, that I'm not allowed to until the embargo lift, but I'll leave you to work out yourself what I'm talking about. But what's interesting about this as well is that GoPro has given a specific figure for the amount of unit sales related to that segment of the market where you have a camera that performs well in low light. So I'm pleased to see that GoPro has finally realized that it is losing a significant market share for that reason. But what else is GoPro talking about here in terms of diversification? You know, Nick Woodman talks about the idea that originally the action camera, the Hero camera, would be a Swiss Army knife, a do-it-all. People would be using it for action camera use, and they'd be using it for vlogging and all sorts of other things. Now, earlier in the year, there was some excitement because GoPro had listed a patent for a camera which looked very similar, eerily similar, to the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Now, these patents, they often don't result in a product. We see them all the time from companies like Apple and Samsung and whoever else. It doesn't mean that that product is coming, but having said that, given what Woodman said about product diversification, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that GoPro would release such a camera, particularly if we're talking about releases throughout next year. So if we assume that we have a Hero 14 coming out in spring, and we might have one of the smart motorcycle products maybe coming out in the summer, what then for the autumn release, the traditional September/October announcement time? Well, that would make sense to announce a camera similar to the Pocket 3. That would be a significant flagship style camera to announce at that time. So I think it's realistic that we might see such a camera that's dedicated to vlogging and performs much better in low light being announced at that time of year, if we're to assume that there is an even spread of announcements from GoPro throughout the year. Now, it might be that they have something else installed. It might be they might go back into the drone business, who knows? But that would make sense. Now, a lot hinges on the GP3 processor. This has to be good. GoPro has a lot riding on this. Given the number of years and number of products that GoPro tends to use its processors in, it doesn't have the same development resources as a company like DJI or Insta360. Those companies can bang out a new product and they're constantly developing, they're constantly on this cycle of developing new things. And GoPro is as well. But Insta360 and DJI have way more resources at their fingertips than GoPro does. So whatever GoPro comes up with in the GP3, it has to be good and it has to have a certain amount of future-proofing. In 2025, when you've got competitors using a 5nm chip and even a 4nm chip in the DJI products, the GP3 has to be a significant advance and it has to equal those in efficiency and, battery usage and processing power. So it remains to be seen how good the GP3 processor is. Nick Woodman seems quite bullish in the investor calls and the earnings calls, but we have to remember in these earnings calls, he has to sound very enthusiastic towards these things. The proof will absolutely be in the pudding when this thing is released, but it better be good. And we need to see even basic things like fast charging making their way into GoPro's products. Now, if we assume that GoPro is going to go into the vlogging business and it's going to release a camera similar to a Pocket 3, what then for audio? Audio is incredibly important for that type of use, and as anyone who's been watching my videos recently will know, I have been banging on a bit about the idea that GoPro should come up with its own wireless audio system. Now, the current GoPro cameras can use wireless audio. You can use Bluetooth audio, and on the Max 2, you can use a DJI mic with that camera, but it's using the lower quality 16 kilohertz sound quality, which obviously doesn't match competitors. Insta360 has its own mic system, and so does DJI. And I think if GoPro is going to release its own vlogging system or vlogging camera, it's absolutely imperative, I think, that it also has its own microphone system. But whatever GoPro does next year, it's going to be an interesting one and possibly a make or break year. I know some people who watch my channel have lost faith in GoPro and have moved to rival cameras and systems. I still think that GoPro can pull a rabbit out of the hat. I liked the Max 2 a lot. Although it didn't have some of the functions that you find on rival cameras, such as the fast charging or the low light capability, I found it performed extremely well in other aspects, and I love the replaceable lenses and I love the color science on the GoPro cameras. So I still think GoPro has a lot of life left in it. I still think GoPro can innovate if it wants to, and 2026 is going to be the year that we see whether it can do that. So yeah, that's my quick summary of what GoPro has in store for 2026 and my predictions. But as always, I'd be interested in what you guys think in the comments below. And as always, if you do like this video, please do give it a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And if you want to, maybe even share it around a little bit. But yeah, I'll be interested in what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.